For TraderInsight.com, I'm Adrian Mans. I got a phone call yesterday from our newest Boot Camp Mastermind group member. He said, hey, what's going on with these trading plans? What's that support and resistance stuff on the right side of the plan, on top, on the bottom? How do I integrate that into my trading? Haven't come across it yet in the Income Trading Academy. That's because this stuff builds as you go through. And some of this actually we covered live at the boot camp versus in the ITA. But it was a good question. And I really thought that there's probably a bunch of people who have the same question. So today would be the right day to take a look at how this plan functions. So here it is, the stocks to watch. This is from today's trading plan. This, of course, is the secondary group of trades on that plan. The around the horn trades would be the first ones, but the reason I'm pulling this one up is you can see here this confluence number. And that's where the question really emanated from, is what's the difference between these support and resistance levels, these support and resistance levels, and then what does that confluence mean to me in my trading for the next day? So that's a great question. And if you're looking at support and resistance, then the first place you want to look on these plans is down here at these floor trader pivots. So floor trader pivots are a construction, right? They're not natural support and resistance. They're going to represent places that price is going to inflect tomorrow. They're hard numbers. So for instance, the central pivot, that red one there, $72.02. The way that's derived for today's trading is you take yesterday's trading, right, which is what generated this double header setup, and you take the high plus the low plus the close of the bar, of the daily bar. You divide that by 3. That's the central pivot. And then R1, S1, R2, S2, those are just mathematical manipulations of that central pivot and how far out we expect to see the next inflection as time goes on. This goes back to a time before we all had charting software to look at and go and plot our own pivots. And this made it easy to just have numbers that made sense in terms of this is where we think the value line is going to be and this is where we think it's going. Then if you look up at this portion of the plan, you see $71.60, $72.11, $72.58. Those are areas that I identified on the intraday chart of SHAK, of Shake Shack, going back a few days, drilling down into the data, looking at volume by price data, and figuring out where are the likely inflection points going to be as this stock starts to move on Tuesday morning. Then you see here this level called confluence. And what this confluence number does is it takes that pivot line and says, are we close enough to that pivot with a support and resistance level that we could have a good early entry? You guys hear Julie talking about those early entries, those advanced entries on the trading plan all the time, and this is exactly what she's referring to. If price on Tuesday were to come up and trade into that pivot, what she would do, because there's confluence there, she would go put an order 72.02 to short back down into the range, and she would be looking for a move back down to about this 71.60 level, give or take a little bit based on what the support and resistance looks like first thing in the morning. So now let's take a look at the chart of the actual trading day and how this one played out. What you see here are the 3 levels that I identified as support and resistance, and this red line running through the data is the central pivot for the session. So when the stock opened this morning, the first thing it did was popped up through that pivot line, came back down again, and it gave us an entry opportunity right there, because what you're looking for is to go short on a violation of the 72.01 pivot, and your first target's going to be $71.60. So this is your short sale, this is your target. Easy to see that one played out right there in the first few minutes of trading. By the time that 10 minutes was over and done with, you had your position established, and by the time the first half hour of the day was over with, you had a nice profit booked on this trade. So you had about a 51-cent profit per share traded on Shake Shack. But that's not all that happened. So if you look at this, then over the course of the session, you're looking for these tests of that pivot line, and each time that you see it happen, you're going to target down into this 71.60 area unless you see something like this. So the first time through, we came down, made it almost down to 71.60, and then a new support and resistance level established itself, telling us that if it comes back down there again, which it did, right, that's the time to take profits off the table. Then as the session goes on, we're less and less likely to take these going into the New York lunch, because that's where things tend to shift and move in the opposite direction. But really, your clue that it was probably not going to get back down into that profit objective was the fact that these lows started aggregating higher up in the range here, and that tells you that you're going to have pressure on that pivot, and that if it moves through, you're going to have a likely move to the upside. But it was a really good question. It was definitely something that I've always thought people really had to sort of wrap their heads around in terms of how to structure these trades. And, you know, I hope that this explanation helps. And to just keep an eye on those trading plans every night. Watch for the support and resistance, watch for the confluence, and plan your trade, trade your plan, even if that is a modification of the plan, taking entries at the pivots. So if you have any other questions, shoot me an email, adrian@traderinsight.com. Hope you had a great trading day today and an even better one on deck for tomorrow. It's the best trader education anywhere, only from traderinsight.com.